G'day all, how are we going? Today I'm going to take you through Descriptor and how to get the hashes and how to crack them. So the scenario that we're in is we're running a virtualized environment and one of our computers has been encrypted essentially with ransomware. So we know we're running Windows 10. We know that it was encrypted using Descriptor because that was in the flash screen for the ransomware. And then what I'm going to take you through is kind of how to mount that and then how to get the hashes and then how to crack them. And hopefully this will be useful if you come across this scenario. So to start with, I'm going to take you through and show you how to install a Descriptor and what it looks like and some of the default settings that we can kind of see so that we have an idea of what we're doing. And then I'll take you through the actual scenario of getting those hashes. So let's cover off first on what I'm using. So I went and got just VMware Workstation. This is a free trial that they have. So normally I use Pro, but I was just like, if you don't have this, like you can use it. I have gone ahead and downloaded and installed a Windows 10 VM. This is the Enterprise Evaluation Edition. You can also have the developers version or whatever version you want. Just get it up into VMware and working. One of my previous videos goes through and shows you how to do this, so go check that out if you don't know, or it's pretty simple to Google. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to install Descriptor and what the defaults look like. So let's just go to their website. So here it is here. If we click on downloads, this is just like an open source binary that you can run. Pretty simple to install on Windows. It gives you just a setup.exe installer. It takes you through a bunch of options. So what we want to look for, I think I have to go to the GitHub. So we're going to go to the GitHub and what we want to grab is we want to grab the releases. So we want to go over here to releases. So in GitHub, normally that's the pre-built binaries that it'll give you. So I'm not going to show you the beta versions. They're not the stable releases, and it's not what I came across when I was trying to solve this problem. So what we're going to use is the latest official version which is released, which is version 1.1. So go ahead and download this. Pause the video if you need and then come back because I've already got it installed. Okay, so as I've just started, I found out that trying to reinstall Descriptor once I'd uninstalled it, Windows did not like that. It had some error with the driver. So it's good to know for you if you've been hit and removed it that potentially the adversary won't be able to reinstall Descriptor on your system just because it faults out. So what I'm going to do is reinstall a fresh version. So what you see me clicking on there is the Windows Dev VM that I installed. So it's essentially pretty easy. You just double click on it, call it whatever you want, import it. This will take a little while. And then we're going to have to go through the Windows basic setup, I think, but it's a bit shorter because the VM should already be set up for us. Now, we want to drag across the decrypt setup version 1.1 that we got. So let's drop that just onto desktop. There we go. Okay, so this time we should have some more luck. Hasn't been installed yet. So next, accept the agreement. Good to note where it's going to be installed. It's going to be installed in a folder called decrypt. Yeah, and then it's going to create a desktop icon. Cool. So it's always good to just get like the defaults of whatever a program is going to be running. Just so you can expect what to see on the machine if you're going to look at this forensically later on. And this is, I guess, is always a good way to test it. If you're trying to figure out a problem, is just install the program, see what it does, and see what the defaults are. Might give you a hint. As we'll see, it'll give us a hint to kind of what hash it's going to store for us by default, which is what we're going to assume to try and break it later on. Okay, now that we're back up after the initial install and then the VM had to restart, let's click on Descriptor and see what we have. So we can see here it's a couple of the partitions for the drive. My VM itself has about 125 gig of disk space, and we also have a CD drive that, if we look in here and go settings, which is good because we're going to actually use this CD drive later to force the BIOS boot. It's showing up in Descriptor as well. Okay, so let's see if we just go encrypt. So algorithm is going to use AES, white mode none. We're just going to go with defaults. Partitions needed for system booting. Cool, let's just go yes. I'm not going to show you what the password is, but we're going to try and crack it later. Cool, so it also gives you an estimate of a trivially breakable. I'll also show, I guess, a website we can try and test to see how hard or easy this is going to be. We find out that it gets quite hard quite quickly, but potentially they've only put an easy password on, or you've got some inside information. What we're going to do is we're just going to go through and encrypt each section. And I'm just using the same password here for each of these. So let's have a look here. So this will take a while. I think it speeds up a fair bit. For a 125 gig drive before decrypting the drive, it took about 25 minutes. I'm fairly certain that the encryption is a little bit faster, but what I'll do is I'll cut here, we'll come back and I'll show you how long it actually took. Hey, so we're back. This time it took me 20 minutes to encrypt that C drive. So the first time I did this, it only took me, I think, 3.5 to 4 minutes. The only thing I can think that's changed is now that I'm recording, so potentially between the VM and my host, it's competing for resources and it took longer. Otherwise, I have no idea. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to restart the VM and we're going to see if it's encrypted the machine. And what should happen is we should come up with a blank screen, and it'll be prompting us for a password to enter, which means that the whole drive has been encrypted. And this is essentially what you get with the ransomware. And what the attackers will do is they'll leave a message on that black screen that'll say, yeah, like here. So here we've just got the password. There is a way where you can enter some text above here. And normally what you'll see is, hey, we've got into your system, we've encrypted it. In the case that I saw, it told us what it was encrypted with, so that's why we could go out and look for stuff like this. But it'll have like, email this email address and send us a Bitcoin and we'll send you the passwords. Cool. Okay, so we're encrypted now. The next step is we're going to go and get a ISO that we'll be able to mount and then boot into, which will give us access to this VM through kind of like another VM. So it's called System Rescue. So System Rescue here, all I did was I downloaded the newest ISO. So it's just sitting in my download file now, just here. So the System Rescue one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually create kind of like an install CD, what you do for like a recovery thing. So this is where we're going to use the CD drive. So the ISO image file, we're going to browse and look for it in the downloads. and I want to attach this. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to go into BIOS and change the boot order so that it boots into this CD first rather than booting to the hard drive, which is encrypted. Now, in VMs generally, it's hard to get into the BIOS because in a VM, it'll boot past that sequence so quick compared to on a physical machine. And in this case, we don't actually get the chance to try and get into BIOS. So this took me ages, but I did find a blog that kind of explained it. And what we need to do is we need to force the VM to go into BIOS by adding something in. So what I did was I Googled around for ages. I ended up finding this blog. It took me forever. But essentially what we're doing is in the VM that we have, in the .vmx file, we're going to paste this line into the bottom of the file and then restart the VM, and that should get us into BIOS. So if I go to where my VM is stored, which I'm having a mental blank, but if we go into settings, I can see I've stored it in Documents, Virtual Machines, WinDev. So let's go there. Documents, Virtual Machines, WinDev. I want the VMX file. So essentially, I probably should be editing this file once I've shut down my machine. So let's shut it down. There we go. And then we can just edit this in Notepad. So let's open it in Notepad because it's essentially just a configuration file. And what we want to do is we want to force setup once equals true. So what this will do is once we save it and restart the VM will look at this file, configuration file, kind of get all this information. It hits the end and it goes, oh, I need to go into BIOS this first time. And then it'll remove this line. So if we want to go back into BIOS again later, we have to come back and re-put this line in. I haven't looked into whether I can force this to do it all the time or not. This is good enough for the purpose. So let's close that. It's now saved. Let's power this on again. Awesome. So we're now into the BIOS for Windows. So if I click on here, and what I want to do is I want to change, so I've got removable devices, hard drive, CD, and I want CD to be above hard drive. So I think it's the plus minus values. Yeah, there we go. So all I did was go shift and then hit the plus button and it moved my CD-ROM up. And then I want to save and exit. I also want to check before I do this because it's going to reboot. Just double check that I've got my CD linked, and I do. So I've got the System Rescue attached to this. Cool, so let's save and exit. Yes, that's what I want to do. Oh, why did it not do that? Oh, maybe because now it's just gone to the next step that it normally would. So now we should restart again and it should boot into the System Rescue ISO. So let's try that. Oh, why isn't this working? Ah, okay. So we've changed it. I just haven't connected my CD drive. Cool. So I'm pretty sure I did this before. So now it's attached. So before it was checking for it, but I hadn't connected it yet. So that's why it wasn't working. As you can see, this is very fiddly. It took me ages to get this. Cool. So here we go. So this is the System Rescue ISO that we've just attached to the CD drive, and we just want to boot into the default settings. So this will take a while, and then what it'll give us is essentially a Linux command line that we can then interact with the Windows VM with, which is what we want. So it takes a while. So in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to go up and set up our network share on our host so that we can pull tools into this machine, and when we run descriptor, we can push out the hash file to our shared file. So the way I'm going to do that is I found another blog, which is this one from Pure Infotech. and essentially they take you through the steps to share a folder and then give the appropriate permissions. If the permissions don't work for this, I have a few other steps, but I think I just messed it up the first time that I did it. But what I want to do is I want to share my downloads folder. So normally this isn't advisable, and if you are concerned here, like, I would disconnect your network interface from your host. So like, turn off your internet. Essentially, we don't really need it anymore if we've downloaded all the tools that we need for this. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose my downloads folder to pretty much anyone for read-write access. And I would recommend after this removing that permission. So if we do this in an isolated environment, it's fine. I'm not too concerned with this because it's ransomware, it's not malware, so I'm not expecting it to spread. But yeah, if you are concerned, like, do the right thing and disconnect everything. So I right-clicked, I went properties, and then I went share, the sharing tab, and then clicked on share. And what I want to do is I want to share with everyone, and they've currently got read access, and I want to give them read-write. So then go share, and done. I can check advanced sharing, but I think, yeah, permissions. Cool, they've got full control, which is what I want, because I want read-write, because when I run the descriptor tool, I want to be able to write the text file out to that. Cool, so this is our, we're back in the system rescue ISO. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run a few commands to see what's connected, and then yeah, we're going to go get the descriptor tool and run it against it and get the hashes, which is pretty exciting. So now we're going to run some commands to try and find what drives are attached. So fs archiver, and then probe simple. Once again, these will all be in the blog, so you don't need to remember them. This will show us the disks that are available. So we can see the SDA-A and the SR0 is the CD drive. So the A should be the virtual share that I've just set up. And then we can see all the drives for the VM. So that's the SDA 1, 2, and 3. We should be able to target any of those, but I'm going to target the SDA 2, which we know is the C drive, just because it's the largest drive. Potentially, if they've used a different password for each, you'll need to dump the hashes for each and then crack all of them. But we already know I use the same password for each of them, so if we crack one, we've got all of them. Okay, cool. So we're back in the system rescue again, and we want to mount. So I was doing some testing there. We want to mount the share drive that we created. So I'll clear that. So what I've done is I've cd'd to the mount directory, and I've created a folder called shared. So the mount command that we want to use is this. So the 192.168.1.110 address is my IP, and the downloads is the folder that I've shared, and then I want to mount it to the shared file within this. So we get this, which is the password for root, which I've come across before. And what we need to do is we need to go turn off the password sharing within Windows. So this is again where you kind of may want to disconnect your network interface because we're exposing this. So what we're going to do is we need to click on the, we need to follow this. So, oh no, sorry, we need to go back into the log and turn off those password settings. So I think from memory, yeah, so it was all the way down at the bottom. So control panel, network and internet, network sharing center. So let's go through this process. Network and internet, network sharing center. And then it was change advanced sharing settings. So this one, and then expand all networks and the password and sharing at the bottom. So it's already been all networks, turn off password sharing. Okay, so that has been turned off. Okay. So this sharing, let's check security. Everyone has full control. Advanced. Inherited from. Share. maybe I need to use the host name rather than the IP. So let's try that. Let's go OK. So for some reason, maybe the network's not working. So let's go back up. And let's change this. So desktop 83 CC P9E. That's correct. Oh. Cool. So it asks for the password. I just hit enter, and then we're straight through. So we can see here, it's given me what's in my download folder. Cool. So we're at the next step. So next step, I've already downloaded it. You can see here the descriptor to john.py. We're good there. Let's check on this machine that we have Python. Cool, we got Python 3, that's awesome. So what I used was, I used this version. So if you just search John, I think password cracking, GitHub, you'll find it. But this is the raw version, so I just found descriptor to john.py. You could probably just Google that as well. I saved this to a file and called it descriptor to john.py. And this is essentially it. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that into our user bin file, so we can run it locally from the system rescue thing. So copy, I want to copy from shared descriptor to john.py, and then I want to copy this to the user bin directory. Cool. So we have that. Now, the next step is, well let's have a look first. So let's go Python user bin and then descriptor, and then let's go TAC-H and see. No TAC-H. So let's just try and run it. Cool. So it just gives us an example of what we can run, which is good because we're going to use this, and then we're going to push the hashes out to the shared file again. So from here, I'm going to cd into the shared drive. So this is my downloads folder once again. And we're going to run the descriptor against the SDA drive that we saw before. So let's have a look at that again so we remember. So fs archiver probe simple, and we want to run it against SDA2. So this sits within the dev. So if I look in the dev directory, yeah, we can see here, so kind of third column along down the bottom, we can see the SDA 1, 2, and 3. So this is just a Linux file system thing. So next, we're going to run descriptor. So let's go back up to the command that we ran. And we want to run it against dev SDA1. And then we're going to push this out to a file, and let's call this decrypt tac hashes.txt. So what this will do is it'll run the Python script against the mounted drive that we have, which is our Windows encrypted system, and push out the results to a text file called, if I could spell CRYPT, decrypt tac hashes.txt. Cool, so now we can check. So I can do an ls here and check that we have that. So decrypt hashes.txt is there, which is good. I can now go into my downloads folder, and cool, so this is the hash. It tells us that it's the descriptor. I'm not sure whether this comes from the Python script or not, or whether it's just pulled from the hashes. And then we're assuming this, so because we encrypted it, this is the AES descriptor encryption that we saw from the default. So, like, well done if you've got to this point. This was the hardest point. This took me days to figure out how to do all this. The hardest part for me was like figuring out that I needed to use System Rescue and then how to use it. From here, it's going to be fairly simple to do the rest. So there's a little bit more research that we need to do, but we're good to go, essentially. Cool. So at this point, we're good with this VM. So I don't really need it anymore, so I'm just going to shut it down. I'll power it back on because we're going to want to test the password when we get to it. Notice that it hasn't booted into BIOS and it's removed the disk again. So we're not booting into the System Rescue thing, and it detaches that each time. So you need to reattach it and then reboot it again if you wanted it. What I am going to do is I'm going to quickly go in and turn off my sharing settings though. So go back to share. I just want to remove everyone. Share, that's good. Let's go into control panel, change advanced sharing settings. Let's turn this password sharing back on. Cool. All right, so we're back to normal. We can turn back our internet back on. We're all good. So next we're going to use Hashcat. So Hashcat runs on Windows or Linux. I've grabbed the binary for Windows. So this is just their main website. And I downloaded the binary up here. That's just downloaded to my downloads file. In the past, I've had trouble using this in a VM. So what I have done, I'm just going to run this from my host. I think they've enabled. So what it was is it was hard to virtualize a graphics card in a VM, and that's why Hashcat didn't work, because it used, especially in the new version, used a GPU. I think that was version 4 that I tried it, so I went away from it. Potentially you can run it in there now. You could fiddle around with it yourself to try and figure it out. So what we're going to do is I'll show you some examples on how to use this. So I had to open up command line. Let's clear that. And I want to change into my downloads. And then I think, yeah, Hashcat 6.1. I'm in Windows. Cool. So the Hashcat exe is here, which is what we want to use. So if I go Hashcat exe and go help, it's going to start up and it's going to give me all the options, which is quite daunting. Yeah, so we can see here Veracrypt, that's like another encryption tool. Descrypt, so we're not really sure what to use yet because there's 3 of them. So what I did was I did a bit more Googling. I found Laconic Wolf, I think a guy named Jake. So he did a really good blog on how to use it, kind of basic examples. This is kind of what we're going to do. So we're going to use the attack mode 0, which is brute force. We need the type, the hash type. And then we're going to give it the example dictionary. So I'll show you the example dictionary in a sec as well. And then there's like further stuff you can do here. You can set up rules. So essentially it goes through quicker, but that's generally what I use. The next thing we need to do is we need to look at the descriptor set. So down here, like normally it gives you examples, which is okay, I guess, but we don't really know still what's going on. So I think I downloaded this and it's still sitting in my drive. No, I deleted this. So let's click on this. Let's go save. This is saved in my downloads folder. So it's here. It's going to open up in text file. So this is the example that it gives us. The Hashcat AES, which is actually what we want. So it wasn't too descriptive from the website. But this is what we had, right? Like what I showed you before was descriptor, it had the 0, the star, and that. So this is what we need our hash to look like for it to be able to crack. Because this is just a Hashcat example page that shows you what they should look like. So what we can do is we can go into the decrypt hashes text that we just got, and we can see here it's kind of labeling it where we pulled it from, which is actually, we don't need that. So let's get rid of that. Let's save the file again. And this looks exactly like what the example was, which is good. That's what we want. So we'll close that. We'll come out of this. So we know we're doing A. we know what the hash looks like. So going back, we know that our TAC-M option is going to be 211, and we have our hash file. So the only thing we need left is our dictionary. So let's have a look at our dictionary. So this is in the hash. You can get your own dictionary and drop it in. You can give it the file path, whatever. But this is the dictionary that we're going to use. So this is like pretty basic. There's not too many passwords in here. It's all numbers. They look like the longest length one is only 9 characters long. So pretty trivial list. Like if you've got a password that's more complex, we'll have a look at that later. But let's have a look at this. So let's get into the cracking. So this is the fun part. So hashcat, exe, TAC-A, 0, which is brute force. TAC-M is the 211, so that's the descriptor AES one that we want. We're in the hashcat file, so we want to go back a directory and we want to, I think it's the, what was it called? It was called, yeah, decrypt hashes.txt. Decrypt. Oh, it's not liking that. Okay, let's cd back, and then now let's do this. So hashcat oh, why is this not working? Let's just get the file path. So hashcat exe, exe, TAC-A, TAC-M, 211, and then let's go C, users, Alex, and then it's in the downloads folder, and the hash file is decrypt hashes.txt. The next thing we want to do is give it the example dictionary. So we're already in the folder structure, so we can just give it the example dict straight away. So this is the dictionary that it's going to try and brute force with. And the last thing we're going to do is go attack capital O. So if we look up the top, attack capital O, optimize kernel enable. So essentially it speeds up the password cracking for us. The downside is I think any passwords over 22 or 27 characters, and I know that's like a broad range, essentially it's not going to be able to do that. So in this case, our password's 8 characters long. We're well within those bounds. We're all good. So this is all we need. So let's run this. And we're done. That was it. So that cracked the password. Here it is here. The password is password. So yeah, really quick, successfully done. So let's test this. So let's go in here. Let's enter password. Oh, click in the screen. Password. And we're in. That's it. Well done. If you stepped through this with me, you've successfully cracked Descriptor, you've pulled the hashes, you've learned how to use Hashcat. Hopefully you got a lot out of this video. So the last two things I'm going to cover off on are, let's look at how complex passwords can get if we're trying to crack them. Obviously this is dependent on the type of rig you've got, and also how long the passwords are, how much extra is included in the passwords. And also I want to show you some mitigations against ransomware and talk about why that's important. So first up, let's go look at the passwords. So this is just some random website that I Googled and found. Password, 0.9 milliseconds, probably accurate. That it took us pretty quick. I've set it to the year of 2000. Why don't we try fancy password? Oh, it takes a little bit longer, 9 years. Okay, cool. So in this is, I'm assuming this, I haven't looked into it too much, but I'm assuming this word list is a pretty simple word list that's not trying the top passwords that are commonly out there. This would be one of them, so it should be probably a lot quicker than 9 years. Seclist is a good password list that you can run. But even let's just look at characters, right? So all zeros. Once you get to a certain number of zeros, it jumps up quite quickly. So how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8, and then it jumps because it needs to try more combinations. Let's try a random bunch. So 2 months, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9. If we get rid of that, it's still 1 day. So a string of 8 random numbers, it's saying it's going to take close to 2 days to crack. Obviously, if someone's setting passwords that are quite common, if you've got a common word list, it'll be a lot quicker. Adversaries probably won't be that nice. It'll just be a random string of numbers, which will mean that your password attempts will be exponentially large to try and crack. Yeah, unfortunately. But at least you know how to try. Let's look at, I guess, mitigations to ransomware. So I live in Australia. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre is a really good place for information. They update their stuff regularly, and they've got this thing. So I just typed in ransomware, ACSC, came up with this, protect yourself from ransomware. So let's go through this. Let's talk to why this is important for it. So number one, have antivirus software on your system. If you're running a new version of Windows and you keep Defender updated, I would say that's probably enough. If you want to go one step further, then you can research some of the vendors, but Microsoft these days is usually pretty good. It's up there with the best, and it comes with your license, so why not use it? Keep all your other software up to date. So vulnerabilities come in software, and that's how attackers sometimes get in. Because remember, to run the ransomware, they have to be on your system. And one of the methods that they can get in is by exploiting out-of-date software or software that's not secured properly. So it's always good to know what you're using. Use strong passwords. So if you do have something that's exposed to the internet and you can authenticate with it with a password, use strong passwords. Passphrases are always recommended. So sentences that mean something to you that aren't related to the program, so that it's easy for you to remember, but it's hard to crack because passphrases can be more than 20 characters long. Also enable two-factor authentication if possible, so that once you enter that passphrase, you might get a push notification on your phone saying, hey, is this you? Do you want to allow it? And you go, yes. It means that they also need access to your phone if they were going to try and break that. And as we saw with the password length, if you get over 8 characters, it gets really hard to crack an account. The other thing is, don't use the same password for multiple accounts, because if they get one, then they've essentially got other accounts. Make regular backups. So this is the biggest one. If you're running a production environment, make backups, because even if you do get ransomware and you don't want to pay the ransom, and you've got a backup that backs up every day, then at least you've only lost a day's worth of work. You haven't lost your whole system. So backups are huge. Don't click on links in emails and messages. Phishing's still really big. Office macros is another big one, so make sure you disable them. Defender and Windows itself is pretty good at picking this stuff up now, and it'll kind of sandbox it. There are still things out there. Use safe behavior online, so go to trusted websites. Just be aware of being scammed to click on things. And yeah, I guess just stay informed. The regular attacks that are out there, just make sure you know what they are. They're quite well publicized these days. And yeah, there's plenty more great information here on the ACSC's website. Or feel free to hit me up on my blog and ask me questions. Always happy to answer or help. So I hope you got something out of today. I really enjoyed putting this together, and I'm looking forward to the next one that I do. See yous.